Well, hey, what up, y'all? We hope you've had a fantastic April. Your ear is still going on a trajectory of success. We want to thank you for listening to the Star Monsters podcast. As always, if you like what you hear, leave a review in Apple or Spotify. Shout us out on social media. We'd really appreciate it. The podcast has been growing. It's been counting on 3 years. And yeah, I don't think there's any signs of stopping the show at all. Actually, coming up on 100 podcasts with different guests. So, planning an in person event here in San Francisco where we interview somebody cool in the entrepreneurship space. And, hopefully, if you guys are in the area, you guys can come out and make it to the show, meet Dan, and yeah, just socialize and, be a bigger part of the community. And without further ado, here is the episode. What's up, Star Mindsets? This is another fun episode of the show. I think we're going to be diving deep into the healthcare system and all of its complexities through a company and a founder slash CEO, Joe Baffone. He is based out of Delaware. He tells me he travels. He's really based in the sky, from what I've been told.
I shouldn't have served that up.
But yeah, I'm just really excited to talk to the CEO and founder of Nexus Health. I've learned that they've surpassed 3 billion in patient access care, I believe. Let me see what else I got.
Financial assistance.
Financial assistance. There we go.
Okay.
And then they've also raised a Series B round of 33 million, if I read that correctly. So that's really big money, and they're doing a lot of wild things in the healthcare industry. I think that they're contributing to the health of not only people, but other companies that create that domino effect. So, Joe, I just want to say thank you for your time today. It's great to meet you and talk to you.
Thanks, Dan. Good to be here. And I do want to say I'm a co-founder, just to give credit where credit is due. Brad Frazier and I have been partners in crime for a while, and because I get to do it with him, it makes it fun, and it gives us the ability to share a brain and have 1 + 1 = 6 instead of 2.
Nice. Yeah. I've got to ask you, Joe. So Nexus Health has been around since what, 2018, if I'm
that's when we launched commercially, Dan, in earnest, but we actually started building our technology all the way back in 2014. So
oh wow,
we've been working on this concept for a while now.
And just to get a little bit of color into what started this journey for you, you had, if I did my research properly, you had your mom, she had like cancer or something, and that's when you noticed that there were these holes in the healthcare system. Can you take us through that time and just what what happened and what kind of inspired you and gave you the what's it called, the ideas to create Nexus?
Yeah, so thanks for digging in. I appreciate that. I think that you're 100% correct. My personal motivation comes from my experience with my mother, with my grandfather, with family and friends. Once folks knew what I did professionally and the fact that I spent a lot of years touching the oncology and cancer space, I had a lot come to me. But individually, my mother, when she was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in her mid-40s, it was at a time when we didn't know that we could cure non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So she basically went into a clinical trial, and she got randomized to the more aggressive arm that now we know, and we learned a long time ago, that we don't need to be that aggressive. So I experienced things in her care journey that shocked me. It mortified me. It created unbelievable frustration. I was in my mid-20s at the time, and thinking that this can't be the way it is. And I felt like I had a reasonable head about me. I was fairly intelligent to help her and guide her through her care journey. But I was left with the idea that really, this is the US, this is the healthcare system. And once you get a diagnosis, there aren't tools and services to just help help guide that patient and the caregivers through their journey, because it really is a journey, especially when you get something like a cancer diagnosis. So thank God my mom's still here and the journey worked out. And I was educated along the way, but I wasn't as lucky as that with my grandfather. And he went through the direct opposite journey, and he made mistakes, and I wasn't, or someone wasn't there every step of the way, managing that care journey and managing decisions and process in a way that led to better outcomes, better
Uh-huh.
earlier decisions. And so ultimately, there was massive frustration built up inside of me. And then my professional career over the years, I got exposed to some things that were going in the healthcare system, and it started to direct me. I was a little stubborn. It took me a long time to get to this place, but started to direct me professionally into what we're doing now.
No way. I like that. Yeah. I mean, I definitely, that sort of resonates with me. My grandfather, he had a prostate cancer and passed away several, like a decade, more than a decade ago. But so was the problem, Joe, was the problem like the doctors or the team that was in charge of the patient there, your grandfather, your grandmother, or your mother, was the problem that they didn't communicate what needed to be done properly, or was there just like so many, they didn't really give you choices on what you know should have been done, or was it confusing altogether? They just confused you?
I think that some of it is the the communication, the information,
Right.
right, that you have to process around the care. But actually, what sat on me and ultimately with Brad and I became this really cool, meaningful business concept, and now real business that's making a difference, is the tools that are available for the healthcare system, meaning providers, right? Whether it be a community provider, health system, an institution, they have three main enterprise software solutions, technology tooling that they utilize.
Yeah.
One is an EHR, electronic health record, electronic medical record. The other is a rev cycle system, a revenue cycle system. And the other is a pharmacy dispensing software system. There's all kinds of other technology. But when you think about the enterprise platforms consistently utilized in provider organizations after interoperability, or I'm sorry, after meaningful use, right?
Hmm.
The federal government stepped into that and started to require and push for EHR utilization. So you've got deep utilization for those three systems, but they're all to serve a clinical, a cash register, or a dispensing purpose. There isn't a
Hmm.
system that is available to manage the administrative portions of the patient's care journey.
And by administrative, that's like inputting the data of like what happened on this day and that day. Is that something else, or what is that?
So I'll give you the example of what we do, right?
Yeah.
So what we do is we manage comprehensively with our technology or our services division, our people using our technology to manage start to finish financial assistance, right? So
Oh,
if
I
a
see.
patient needs financial assistance, we know because we're there pulling in the order from the EHR. We're working up every patient, right? After you find out what insurance they have, then you find out is there other assistance available, and we manage that. But not only we find it, then we make sure it's being utilized, that its claims are being submitted against it, that the payment is being occurring and being recorded. It's like rev cycle
Yeah.
management and access management for the financial components or the revenue cycle system with the traditional payers in provider organizations. So without a company like an Nexus Health, without
Sure.
the technology and the services, literally the space before us was using fax machines, spreadsheets, post-it notes, free text notes in these systems that I described before. So if you could imagine your life without a cell phone,
Yeah.
right? And you
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
about all of the things administratively, just your calendar, just the to-dos,
Tell me
right? So
that.
many things, like just half of your brain is in your phone to find out what you need to know about the next podcast or whatever it
Sure.
is.
Sure.
That's the administrative things, right? That's what I would relate it to. So people didn't have a central place to manage the financial assistance functions. They don't have a place to manage the
Uh-huh.
functions associated with a patient that's on an oral therapeutic and the remote nature of that. A space to manage the logistics associated with cell and gene or testing and diagnostics and genomic profiling. Those are all things that we will be solving for. Right now, we're really focused on financial assistance and access services. But just imagine
Right.
If you had to manage all of that, right? And
Who
you had to
does it?
manage the
Yeah.
patient's care,
Right. Who does it? Like, is it somebody who's an employee at these insurers and they just look at 20 different things
it's
as
so
a
fragmented and it's so disparate. So what's
yeah.
going on is like in financial assistance, you got a financial counselor, you got a farm tech, you got a social worker that's
Right.
doing components of this for
Oh
the
yeah, I've
provider
seen that. Yeah.
organization, right? Because they've got skin in the game, right? They've got like some of these complex specialties that we deal in, they're buying and billing on the infused drug. They've got the dispensing pharmacy. So they
Right.
have to make money
Yeah.
on those functions so that they can maintain themselves. Ultimately, they have to manage that as much as best they can so
Right.
that they remain whole, but they don't manage very well. So there's a lot of handoffs, and the patient has to manage a portion of it. Especially pharmacy manages a portion of it, but it's all disparate. And what I mean by that is every single manufacturer's got a website that you go to for their copay assistance. Every single charitable foundation has multiple funds available
Yeah.
for help for patients. So it's all in a bunch of different places, right? So think about the administrative strain to manage that. Well, on Nexus Health, solved for that. We brought it all into one place, a
Very
comprehensive
cool.
destination, comprehensive workflow to manage all of that. I use that as an example, and of course, we're really proud of what we do. But every other aspect of healthcare has administrative functions along with it, but it's always one off, right? It's always kind of product or
Uh-huh.
lab or testing specific. It's not provider specific and centric like we are, so that everything can be managed in an enterprise environment like the EHR for the clinical treatment plans and such.
Yeah, no, and I know healthcare is just such a controversial or like a something that people have so many different feelings about because it's a personal thing. It's like everyone's, healthcare is different from everyone's. But so Joe, I'm curious now. So there's like over 1,000 different healthcare providers, I'm guessing, right in the US. There's like, or is that
Oh, it's more than that. Just an oncology is a small specialty, and I think ASCO, the American Society of Clinical Oncology, estimates that there's over 12,000 medical oncologists,
Oh
just
wow.
medical oncologists. So there's hundreds of thousands of physicians, generally speaking, in this space.
Yeah, yeah. I'm guessing like, but like the healthcare providers, like just the US, has like, what, 270 million people, and then there's just you think about how that all gets managed. Like there's so many different, like, what do you call them? Insurers, right? Like health insurers.
Oh, health
That's
insurers.
yeah, I
Yes,
guess
there's
that's what
many
I'm
different
saying.
insurers. Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, and part of your aspect is you kind of work with those insurers specifically. Is it only oncology, or is it also you know different people in the healthcare system who need who go through this administrative process?
So we're in 14 total disease states.
Uh-huh.
So we started in oncology, but getting back to your question, so the space is good about managing what needs to occur to administer the benefit for patients. So the benefit from an insurer, like a traditional insurer. So if you have an insurance plan, you've got a broker that you go through or your company, and you land with an insurer, right? It could be United, it could be one of the Blues. So that's a traditional payer, right? The mechanism by which traditional payer benefits are made, it's electronic through an EDI communication process. Everything is housed in the revenue cycle
Hmm.
management system. So
Hmm.
it's very easy to administer and adjudicate, right? That
Hmm.
process, easy-ish, right? And it's all centrally located for provider organizations. Financial assistance is a payer, right? So pharma have these copay programs. Charitable
Hmm.
foundations, 501(c)(3)s have multiple funds for all kinds of different disease states. They serve as a payer. The
Hmm.
problem is this electronic EDI world
Yeah.
of creating a really organized and comprehensive, compressed workflow in one place doesn't exist in that financial assistance world. And that's a massive payer opportunity that ultimately that's what we're solving for. When I say payer, like those financial assistance providers really are a payer, but the process isn't electronic. The process isn't streamlined. You don't know going in what's available. You've got to do a search based on that specific patient's criteria at the moment the diagnosis is rendered, and a treatment decision occurs. Those are the things that we've created system and processing.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm reading over 95 healthcare provider organizations use one of your software is called AssistPoint. Is that what you're
That's our
just alluding to?
technology. Yeah. And so it amounts to 3,000. So if you think about, we started in the oncology space, and we have other specialties, obviously, that we're representing, but a big chunk of our provider universe is oncology still. And we have over 3,000 providers in the network. So we've grown really, really rapidly.
Oh wow. Well, Joe, I guess I got to talk to you a little bit more about like the entrepreneurial side of this, right? Just since it seems like, um, well, healthcare. I think healthcare entrepreneurs they're a little bit different. They got to fight the red tape. So was there like, was it just HIPAA or was it more like you have to convince a lot of different higher ups like management teams of these um people you work with just to try the product at first, or how does
So
that
you
go to
just
market
some of
kind
the
of go?
challenges that we
Yeah.
faced up front.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're hitting on something really important, right? Where we felt like we had this concept that was a no-brainer. And then, when you start to go to market, people may get it, but they just, do you really believe that someone can pull off something so disruptive, right? So we had to get through that. And once we proved with our MVP that it was valuable enough for us to get providers, right? Because it's chicken or the egg, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Do,
tell me.
do we do we need to go to pharma to sponsor and fund this thing, right? As part of our
Yeah.
commercial entry, or do we go to providers and make sure we put people in the seats to demonstrate ultimately where we're provider centric, right? We're managing the workflow with and for them to allow everyone, the healthcare industry, to be patient focused. So the answer was for us that we had to go, and I don't know which the provider is, the chicken or the egg, but we had to go to the provider first. And we had to put people in the seats to create value for pharma to say, okay, yeah, I'll dive in and I'll create this commercial relationship with you. So when we went to providers,
Hmm.
the concept was really cool for the C-suite. And
Hmm.
this is still some of our challenge, right? Where the C-suite loves it. And ultimately, when I can give our data as it relates to what we're able to provide in terms of just revenue collection at reduced costs in the financial assistance world, the CEO, the CFO, the CCO, whatever up C you want to put on there,
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
all in, right? And they love it. But then they go around the corner because they don't know anything about financial assistance. They know a little bit, enough to be dangerous about revenue cycle management and what role financial assistance should play in that. And then they turn it over to someone that is doing this thing day to day. Now, I do not in any way, shape, or form want to disparage anyone doing that work because it is amazing work. It's life-changing for the patients that they support. But think about it. This has been decades that they've been managing with the fax machine, the spreadsheet, the post-it notes, whatever it may be, but they're stuck in that. And they
Hmm.
believe they've built the best processes, and they have. They
Hmm.
really have for the times prior to an Nexus Health, right? And then we brought competition in, others that are trying to help manage the space. So when the C-suite has that conversation with those responsible for this, they get pushed back and say, oh no, we're doing a fine job. We're managing this, right? But ultimately, like if you ask the right questions, and we're arming our C-suite now with the right questions, like one
Yeah.
is, do you know how much you actually collected last year in financial assistance? And if you think is that a verifiable source? Is that tied back to your rev cycle system? Is that tied back and reconciled against what you're doing in your pharmacy dispensing software? Typically, the answer is no, right? And so it's now a matter of managing change. It's managing ownership. It's not calling the baby ugly. It's saying, hey, listen,
Sure.
sometimes infants come out and they look funky. Let's just make that infant look like, a human being, right? So that's a
Uh-huh.
horrible analogy. I hope we can strike that one from
Yeah,
the
well, let's
podcast.
take that
But
one out. Sorry. Yeah, we'll
yeah,
take
let's
it
take
out. I was like, maybe
that
not
maybe not
that
that one. Yeah.
one. Oh, I gotta ask you.
So ultimately it's a challenge of change
Uh-huh.
management. It's a challenge of getting people past what they've done and not saying it was wrong, but moving to a place of, okay, let's just improve. Let's learn together. And then on the pharma side, really it's people saying, I've provided the best access solutions or the best portal experience, but it's all one off, right? There's hundreds, thousands of products out there. And if think about it, if you had to manage financial assistance, you would have to know about each and every product, what portal, what process I'm supposed to manage. So we
Yeah.
had to, change the dynamic of we're not coming in and competing with hubs. We're optimizing what hubs and service providers provide, but we're just bringing it into our technology network, into the workflow, into a technologically sound approach to managing this stuff. So that was the stuff that we managed. And I would tell you, like 18 months ago, I think we were about 750 providers represented. Now we're 3,000.
Oh
So,
wow.
it started to click for folks.
Well, Joe, I gotta ask you. So, like, there seems to be like a lot of different problems you guys solve, but I guess like in the beginning or even right now, is it the same? Like, if I were to ask you, like, what problem does a Nexus Health solve? It solves like the administrative burdens of healthcare providers, and is that the right answer? Because I'm not, educated, or I don't have a healthcare background, so for the common person, it's hard to understand this stuff. It's just, but is that what would you say the problem is that you guys are solving? I know there's a lot, so it's kind of hard to figure out which. But maybe what's your main problem, or what's like, the thing that you guys really call your bread and butter, or you know what I mean?
Yeah. So you nailed it, right? So we are looking and building we are creating an enterprise platform, a SaaS model, a services model to manage administrative functions for the patient's care journey at the provider level, right? That's our big vision. And we're going to provide tooling and people to manage financial assistance, access services like free drug, like benefit verifications, like prior authorizations, right? We're
Yeah.
going to help manage the remote nature of patients on oral therapeutics. And if it's with a cancer diagnosis and you're not linked to that patient and making sure that you're connected to them every step of the way, that's a problem. We're going to help manage the cell and gene space that is really cumbersome, like especially some of this personalized immunotherapies that are available and processes around that, the cell and gene and testing and diagnostic environment that needs tooling to make sure that that administrative portion, like do this next, do this next. This is what it means to your care, right? Report back into the system so the provider's whole around the things that are going on or not going on. That's what we're solving for. So we see the massive problem is administrative toxicities. Administrative toxicities are dramatically impacting patient care, right?
Yeah.
Because there is intention to provide good care, but if I don't have the tools, like if I don't have my cell phone to manage my day, I'm not effective anymore, right?
Yeah.
As I once was, right? I can't imagine the day when I was doing this without my cell phone. Well, that's what it's like being a healthcare provider. They don't have this central tool to manage the administrative portions of all of their patients' care journey. We're solving for that, right? We're solving for that globally.
Uh-huh.
That's where we're going. But financial assistance, free drug management, we're doing that right now. So the administrative toxicity associated with the logistics and administrative portions of managing financial assistance and free drug leads to financial toxicity. So ultimately, what we're solving for current state now is something that is a big topic, right? The disparities and equities of care, right? Where you've got people that aren't getting the care they deserve because of one portion of this whole disparities conversation is the economic scenario,
Yeah.
right? And so because we're solving for how to do it and how to do it really well and
Hmm.
comprehensively, the financial assistance that's available, we are really crushing this financial toxicity thing. And we're getting more patients on therapy. We're getting on therapy quicker. We're keeping them on therapy. So that's what we're doing. The big vision all the way down to what we're doing right now.
Yeah, yeah. So is the Nexus Health, is it all across the US now, or is it just the East Coast, or how's the
All
business going?
over,
All over,
all over.
nice.
Yeah, we're spread. We're spread by the population, right? So I
Uh-huh.
think we're doing a good job of getting customers throughout, the population centers in the U.S.
Now is it so you guys work with like the health insurance is like the so the customer, that's not necessarily the insurer, right? Or is it more of
No, so we have
the
two
hospitals,
key
doctor's offices? Right.
customers.
Yeah.
So the private practice, community-based physician organizations, we sell our software into
Ah,
them,
gotcha.
or we sell our services into them to manage all of this for them wholly and completely. And then that's the institutions, that's the health system. So that's the provider world. So it's a
Right.
SaaS-based model, or it's a percent of collections around what we're managing for them. And then on the life science side, we basically build integrations with the programs that they provide, right?
Oh,
The
okay.
free
Gotcha.
drug, the financial assistance. And so when we create the wires, the API approach to sharing
Sure.
information,
Yeah.
ultimately they're paying us transaction fees for these patients being worked up. So
Uh-huh.
we basically bring life science programs, all of their copay, all of their free drug, all of their access services into the workflow of these provider organizations to make sure patients are getting and the fulfillment occurs for those patients.
Man, that's such a big web of big web of back and forth. It's kind of hard to not necessarily hard to picture, but well, for you, Joe, did you so when you were creating a Nexus Health, like what kind of research did you have to do? Because I feel like, you try to talk to healthcare providers or doctors, they're all private about what they do, right? Like they can't say a word. Like, was there something that you did to understand the space better before you guys got more penetration in the market, or how did that
Yeah,
go? Because it's kind of interesting.
I think most of it was school of hard knocks, school of
Yeah.
experience, right? So my background personally is on the pharma side. And I did a
Hmm.
bunch of different things. Most of my time was spent on the business side of oncology, around reimbursement, around access services, around payers, around what we're doing with healthcare organizations, the big healthcare organizations, to purchase data, to purchase services, to help solve for the challenge of patients getting the medications that they need. I
Hmm.
also had responsibilities for teams that led our relationship with advocacy groups at a time when we could work more closely on the commercial side or the access side with charitable foundations. So I learned the intricacies of the access environment, of the healthcare system from the business side of the equation.
Oh
And then
yeah.
my co-founder had very similar yet different experiences, meaning he was in the pharma space for years and had different responsibilities. He's got an extensive experience in the lab world. And then he moved the electronic health record world. He
Hmm.
worked with and for a company that was being built in the oncology space and ultimately became the dominant player in the oncology space as an executive, and learned a ton about software solutions and workflow from a provider perspective. I went on as an operator outside of pharma to really dive in deeper to the access world through a more of a data approach, bringing data into our company so that we could help solve for some of the challenges around reimbursement, what was getting paid for, what wasn't getting paid for, why were there denials, and what were the things that we could do to
Yeah.
change and reshape that narrative around what the patient was getting access to. So all the while thinking
Yeah.
about what are things that are going to reshape the space, having these deep relationships with the providers. You brought up something really important, that typically they're really close, they keep closed these things that they do in their organizations. But because we had long-standing trusted relationships, as we were developing the concept, as we were building the ideas, we had the ability to go in and shadow and learn. And so I think that's the foundation for doing it as close to the right way as possible, right? To getting to that MVP so that we could launch something commercially. But you bring up a good point.
Uh-huh.
Unless you have those relationships, unless you have the trust, you're not walking in that door and collecting the kind of information we did to build the foundation of who we are.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like the security would kick you out immediately, right? I I mean, so Joe, I guess like this whole thing is quite fascinating. But for you, like, what were like some of the internal challenges that maybe not necessarily like as an entrepreneur, you kind of go through the challenges of yourself and your doubts, right? But I guess I'd love to hear about that too. But also just I guess like the building a product or building like a software that can actually really do what you envision it to do. Were you like working on engineering stuff at the same time, or you had to find all these other people to write the software and build the whole thing? Like how did that process how did that happen for you guys?
Yeah, no, we had to build that. As it relates to Brad, I would say he's a self-made technologist, but he's
Uh-huh.
not an engineer, right? He's not someone that leads a product team. He can do those things, And both of us have a vision of where this thing needs to go to help leaders and folks within our organization get there. So ultimately, no, we had to build that. And I would say that was one of the biggest hurdles we had, and that we're still working on, right? To
Uh-huh.
put the right team together of A players that are passionate, but also equipped and desire to really dive into this deeply to make sure that we're having the most significant impact as rapidly as we can. Because ultimately, if we're not able to do what we do,
Yeah.
the thing that drives me every day is that means there's patients not getting the help they deserve, right? So I think that ultimately, no, we weren't doing the engineering, but we were bootstrapping it, and we were figuring out a way to bring in that next person or a person to help us do these things, and that's been a constant iteration. We're continuing to iterate, even at we're about 230 people, and the people side of it is an iteration, right? Still working to get it right, getting structure right, making sure
Sure.
that we're a finely honed machine. As a small company, we're still working on being operationally excellent, building scale with everything that we do, being a product company versus a features and fix company, right? With a young
Hmm.
company in the technology space, that's a tough thing to make sure that
Turn
you're
turn the corner
managing,
around,
right?
right?
Like
Yeah,
everybody
yeah.
wants to say they're agile, but like before you're agile, what are you, right? If you want to be a product company, there's a lot that you have to do and be dedicated to be truly product oriented.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. Yeah, yeah. I mean, product, I don't know. It seems like a lot of the other areas of business are highlighted a little bit more. I guess like Silicon Valley, they'll talk about product a lot, but when you were going through all these iterations you mentioned, um, did that like get to you where you were like, or maybe you get some feedback and it's like negative, or it's like something that it's I wouldn't say you feel personal about, right? Like, did you how did you like do you just put your feelings to the side when it comes to that, or is it just you know just thinking about the business first? Because I think a lot of people struggle with that, right? When it's like somebody says critiques your baby, as they say.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And I feel like I'm being interviewed by Barbara Walters because I could start crying over it. So I'm not going to start crying, Dan.
Oh
Right.
man.
So, but that's tough stuff, man. I care about people. I'm
Right,
doing what I do because I care.
right.
Right. And I think that the one thing at the end of the day, the tough decisions or the breakups, so to speak, when things didn't work out with people,
Hmm.
right, that hits hard, and it still hits hard. I think the focus on the greater good and the passion that I feel for the
Hmm.
difference that we're making in this space, and the professional satisfaction I'm getting out of what I'm doing, I feel like I say it every year. I'm working harder than I ever did before. And it seems like, wow, is this sustainable? And I wouldn't want to be doing anything else. I really love what I'm doing. I love working this hard. And so that's a gift. But there is no panacea. We're not living in a perfect world. We're living in an imperfect world with imperfect people. So I think I have the ability to compartmentalize, but you can hear, right? You can hear the motion coming out of me when I
Sure,
focus on it.
sure.
It's hard, but I think that my experiences, I think one of the things that I look back on, I'm like, why didn't I start doing this thing earlier? Or why didn't I start doing another thing, right? As an operator, because I was an operator before this earlier. And it's because I needed the experiences. I
Sure.
needed the learning. I needed the education. I needed to fail.
Right.
I also needed to bang up against people that didn't care as much. I also needed to bang up against processes that I didn't believe in that weren't human. I also needed to bang up against things that were people were too focused on the soft stuff versus what is your mission,
Uh-huh.
right? Are you able to make the tough decisions so that you can power through to and for that mission? And I think that's the thing that I just keep investing in. I keep reminding myself about. I keep grinding in the moment because it really isn't a grind. In my prior life and other
Yeah.
jobs, it felt like a grind, Dan. It felt like a grind. I'm not grinding. I'm powering through challenges. I like challenges. I'm super competitive. I think that's part of it as well.
Uh-huh.
But the fulfillment with doing the greater good and making a difference, right? That's what I'm driven by, right? I want to make a difference. I want to, at the end of this day,
Yeah.
I hope I was able to make a little bit of a difference in you,
Yeah,
right?
right,
And
right,
you're
right.
certainly going to make a difference in me. And so that, I think that's the thing that keeps me focused. I'm also someone that is always focused on the possibility
Okay.
versus the regret,
I like that. Yeah,
right? In every bad situation, and I'm not going to unload on you right now, but there's
yeah.
some bad stuff that I'm going through and that we all deal with. And I'm focused on the blessing. I'm
Man, yeah,
focused on
that's
the
true.
possibility. There's so many things you learn in failure and challenge. So I don't know if you plan to
Cut that out.
unpack that stuff
Unpack
with
that.
me.
Unpack
No,
that. I don't
but
know.
you did a good job, right? That's a good
I'm not a
job.
therapist, brother.
All right. I'll give you
Maybe one day,
120
man.
bucks for that hour.
Oh shoot. Man, so the healthcare space is so fascinating. And thank you for sharing that, Joe. I just want to say that yeah, like every entrepreneur I talk to, it's always sometimes, well, it depends, but there's, always this personal relationship between like the problem that they solve. It's, met your family members, they went through some difficulty, and you yourself too went through that difficulty. But when it comes to the getting the company to greater heights and the ultimate vision, what would you say that ultimate vision is? Is it just continuing this trajectory of adding more providers and life science partners, or is it what would you say is like, it seems like you already are achieving what you've set out originally to do, but like, do you find more motivation in just that this problem's not necessarily like um being the solution isn't being used by as many people as you think it could be, or like uh what's kind of the ultimate or some of just the future goals that you guys have in mind, since it seems like you guys have gotten some really good success?
Yeah. So the ultimate goal is to expand the platform into those other administrative areas, right? So right now we're building a technology network, but we want that technology network to be doing more with us. So remember those areas that I said that we're going to be stepping into. So if we just focus on financial assistance and access services, right? Before we start talking about those other administrative functions,
Yeah.
if I have a technology network that I do of 3,000 physicians, and by the end of this year, we're going to be over 5,000. And
Right.
the next year after that, we're looking to almost double after that. We are building a technology network. So no matter what administrative function or logistical function that we take on, we're going to take it on comprehensively, which means
Hmm.
that any access service from a life science provider, from a charitable foundation, has to come through us
Hmm.
for our technology network. So what have I created? What has Brad created? We've created an ecosystem through our enterprise platform that all services and data products flow through. And that's our capitalistic approach. That's
Sure.
how we're going to make money. That's how we're locking up what this looks like for the future. And we're
Yeah.
building a big technology network that if you want it to be optimized, if you want your services to have a true impact on care, if you want your services to be fulfilled in the most efficient way, you're going to come through a Nexus Health. That's what we're building. And we're demonstrating that we can do that. And ultimately, we're going to monetize all of it.
I like that. Yeah, yeah. Well, Joe, you had alluded to like your past jobs and professions. They were harder than what you've got right. Well, with what your profession is right now. Um, do you feel like that a certain time during your part of creating Nexus Health and getting it to where it is, do you feel like you don't feel like an entrepreneur anymore because maybe like the system's kind of automated, and I'm guessing everyone who was an entrepreneur will feel like an entrepreneur at all times, but like when you think about it, like the CEO of Nike, who or Phil Knight, who's really successful for creating Nike, and he just becomes rich or just ultra, uh, he becomes like the key person in a space. Do you feel like you throughout your time and work here, it's felt like you were doing so much, I can imagine, as an entrepreneur, but now you got like people working for you, right? So has there been like has that been like a smooth transition, or would you say that, you know, um, it's something you had to learn along the way in terms of being a manager or, key manager, or CEO in general?
So, so I'll tell you, we're not anywhere close to that. So I haven't had to deal with that yet. I think that one of the things that we do have to address, and that we're going through some
Yeah,
organizational and structural changes, is that Brad and I are too much into the weeds.
sure.
If
Yeah.
I told you the amount of hours I was working a day, you would say I was complaining. So I'm not going to tell you how many hours I'm working a day, But really, right now, Dan, I'm too far into the weeds.
Uh-huh.
Brad's too far into the weeds on things, and I think that we're building a scalable approach that gives us the ability to pull ourselves more and more out of the weeds.
Yeah.
So let's talk in another couple of years, and I'll
Yeah,
tell
we'll
you how
talk
that
in a
transition goes.
couple.
But we
Man,
got to be
it's,
better. That's one thing that we're looking and we're working to be better at, right?
yeah, yeah. I've definitely noticed that too with not just people I speak to or just my own company right here, but it's interesting. Like as you create something, it's like hard personally to move away from what you've created and out and give it to an employee or like a somebody who's not you because there's always that you built something and you want to be associated with it, but then again, it's like better for you to maybe even for the business as well, just to take the step back and let people that you trust and pay to do the work. You know what I mean?
For
That's
sure. Yeah,
definitely
and I think I think
tough.
some of it too is right when you're so small and you're just working on that next thing,
Right.
right? And this is all about scale, right? If you're working on that next thing, but that next thing is going to be the same as the next 10 things, and you're still doing it as one off, you're not creating scale, which means you're creating inefficiencies, which means you don't have enough people. So you got to keep getting your hands dirty on something that you should have created scale the first time around. So you can get your hands dirty on the next thing, create scale around that, get your hands dirty on the next thing and create scale around that. So like that's one piece of advice that I give to entrepreneurs, startup,
Yeah.
like get that right in the beginning. Like make sure whatever you touch, you're trying to create process, operation, and scale around it. And Brad and I always talked about it,
Yeah.
but we weren't focused on it. We were focused on the fire drill. We were focused on that thing that was so exciting about us
uh,
to make a difference. You know?
I like that. Yeah. I mean, scales how all these companies exist. It's just hard to, picture when you were the one who made the whole thing exist in the first place. So I really like that. A couple last things I'd love to hear from you, Joe, or just about, you raised a Series B. Is it Series B or Series C? Series B, right?
It would be,
C,
yeah.
B, B. When you did that, how did you feel after that? Just since that's a really remarkable or pretty, what do you call that? Public facing event. Was that
Yeah.
something you guys were like, the weight's off your shoulders, or was it just more weight on your shoulders? Like, how did you feel after
We felt great. We picked a great partner and it's paid off really well, right? Not just the money. I think the big thing is to pick the strategic, like when you're looking for the strategic, right?
that?
And a lot of times when you're doing around, you're trying to pick money, you're trying to pick strategic. So we felt really good. And then it's paid massive dividends, like the strategic component of it, whether it be just introductions or just participation in, us building out our strategy. So we felt really good with that. I think that you always look at it, you say, okay, through the process, one of the things that I would tell folks is that, all right, make sure you're raising enough so you don't
Uh-huh.
have to jump into a fundraise again. I would say that, we probably thought about that. Should we have raised a little bit more money? And then when you step into the macro environment that we're in, thank God we raised it before the macro environment we're staring
Uh-huh.
at right
Uh-huh.
now. So I would say like post that and we start to step into what we're seeing in the markets right now. We're like, woo, glad we were doing it then, right? That type of thing.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately it was a really good feeling because you're so exhausted going through that, right? Literally,
Hmm.
people say it's a full-time job to fundraise. It's more than a full-time job.
Yeah, yeah, I
So
get you. Yeah.
it was a little bit of a relief to say, okay, now let's start to dive in deep and really focus on the business because the last 6 months we've been focused on the business, but we're not sleeping at all because we're doing the fundraise. Maybe I'll have a little bit more clarity. We'll do more efficient, effective things.
Man, I like that. Yeah, yeah, no, most definitely. Well, Joe, a couple last couple questions here we like to ask entrepreneurs for fun are, um, well, I guess we'll just transition to that. So, if you could have a dinner with a business person or just a person you don't know yet, who do you think you'd pick for that?
Oh man, you should have prepped me for this one.
I
This
should
one
have
I got to
prepped.
think about. You
Oh
should have
shoot,
like
my
let me
bad,
think.
my bad.
So no, I'm
On the
cool.
spot.
The business person.
I would say Warren Buffett, but that's just
Would
me.
you say Warren Buffett?
Yeah, yeah. He's got a couple more years in
Give me
him.
the next one, and I'll multitask. I'll process in the background while you're
Okay,
giving
yeah.
me the
The
next
next question is if you could give Joe advice to himself when he was 20 years old or in his 20s before he started this endeavor, what would you say?
So I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, right? I thought that I wanted to be a um, an entrepreneur that was all running multiple businesses at once.
Yep.
I see myself as a serial entrepreneur. After this, I don't know when after is. I have all kinds of notes and documents on the next thing that I want to do to change the world, right? But when I was young, I thought the answer is just to run a bunch of differences of businesses at once. And I did a lot of personal things, little small businesses here and there, and I diluted myself. So I think what I would have done, and I do it with my kids, pick your passion, invest into it 100%. And if you want to be an entrepreneur that's running a bunch of different business, that's a different purpose, right? That's a different thing. That's a different function. That's a different person. For me, I do need to be challenged. I want to do a lot. And I thought that was the answer. For me, I first ask myself, what is it that you really want to do? What I really want to do is make a difference. So I would have said, invest early, more deeply in something that you're so passionate about. You know, you hear this over time. I'm not creating something. Find your passion, right? And if you're passionate about something, it's not going to feel like work. I got a little different angle on it.
Yeah.
Like search as long as you have to find something,
Mm-hmm.
something that stirs you that you want to invest in, and you want to invest in it deeply and as your primary professional interest, so you can get really badass and make the most rapid difference in it. I told you earlier on, right? I wondered why I did what I did for so long in corporate America
Uh-huh.
is because I diluted myself. I really did, right? I
You
didn't
mean,
allow
what
myself
do you
to
mean?
focus.
You mean you tired yourself out? Is that what you're trying to say? Or you, no, you
I
did.
diluted myself from a perspective of having my mind on all of these different things, my effort on all the different things
Oh,
that
okay.
I was responsible for experiencing or building as little businesses, personal things, or a personal real estate investment strategy or whatever. And it
Yeah.
diluted my brain, right? It
Yeah.
diluted my brain so that I wasn't able to learn everything I needed to learn to really lift something significant and life changing off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it took me 25 years of professional experience to get to a place where I was equipped to really, with Brad, do this thing. So
Nice.
if I had to do it all over again, I would say instead of that approach, like find out what really drives you, right?
Right. Right.
Just really determine why that is and what's stirring you about that. And if you want to be this serial entrepreneur with the idea of running a bunch of businesses as one, that's a different person. That's a different thing. So learn about how to really manage a bunch of different things, get a bunch of good people at all these different things, and then start to pour into that. For me, it was a matter of getting experience in the areas that I wanted to make a difference about, and then pouring myself 100%, investing in it, learning about it, interrogating it up and down, doing the due diligence.
Right.
And instead of taking 25 years to do that, if I gave myself that advice to find that thing, pour into it, learn as much as you could, maybe I could have done it 10 years. I have no regrets because that's
Uh-huh.
the way my brain worked. That's the way the experiences. But if I did this thing with Brad 10 years earlier,
Mm-hmm.
I would have had the ability to impact more people.
I like that. Yeah, that's a very great answer. I got one more another question here. Has there been a book or maybe like some form of art, maybe it's like a film too, but that inspired you or was really influential in your life, like that you read when it comes to just what you're doing as as a CEO of Nexus Health? Was there like a book or was there like a person?
I don't think there's one thing, and I think like I'm still in the back of my mind thinking about that one person. That I fashion myself as a critical thinker. I fashion myself as someone that can take a bunch of different data points. So I don't think it's one thing that I read. It's not one thing that I saw.
Hmm.
It was what I collected over time about different business owners, about different sports figures, about coaches. I think that I think it would be a coach more
Uh-huh.
than a business leader that I would want to talk about because ultimately I think I'm really good. I think I'm pretty smart. I think that, I'm the right person for what I do, but
Yeah.
ultimately it's a matter of all the people that you put around you and learning how to do that well. So I would say that it's not one book, it's not 10 books, it's being able to look and pull components out. Because one thing I think that we do as human beings is it's like the flavor of the month, right? Like that book that I'm reading, oh my gosh, like the content in that was so good. It's going to be life changing. For
Uh-huh.
me, it's kind of like taking the pieces that make sense because no one's got it all figured out,
Right.
right? Think about it. Look at
Right.
the authors of every book you read. And then if you dive into their background, they don't have everything figured out, right? So I just
No one
like to
does.
like
Yeah.
pick pieces from everything. So I think that, to turn your question around, I think that I'm pretty good at picking pieces from different people and different books. So other
Hmm.
than the Bible, I think that,
Uh-huh.
that is that's the singular book that has had the most impact on me. But
Uh-huh.
I think any business book, I think any motivational book, I think any historical book, it's probably like an amalgamation of a bunch of different things. Sorry, I'm not answering
It's
your
okay.
question.
Last question, Joe, is what is your startup mindset?
My startup mindset is to find out how you're wired, what's important to you, to really determine and dictate how you're going to start that thing up and pour into it. Right?
I
This
like
is
that.
not the startup world is not for the faint of heart, right?
Yep.
And no matter how strong we are or how good we are, if you step into the startup world, it's going to be so much more difficult. It's going to take such a physical, mental, and emotional toll on you at phases of that journey, but it's so much easier to get to if you understand yourself a little better.
Hmm.
You understand how you're wired, right? That thing about, do I want to run a bunch of businesses at once, or do I want to be a true one after another serial entrepreneur? Like, understand yourself, and then whatever motivates you. Because a lot of people, I'm not going to knock people that want to go out there and make a bunch of money, right?
Yeah.
Right? If that's your thing, that's not my thing. My thing is make a lot of money because I'm a capitalist and I think I'm going to be able to change the world in a bigger way on the next thing. So know yourself,
Right.
pick something that really stirs that thing, that important thing that you know about yourself, so that ultimately the journey is more fun and the
Uh-huh.
journey is more rewarding.
Wow. Well, Joe, well, did you ever come up with who you have a dinner with, or
I think I think that I would probably have to pick Andy Reid
Andy
for
Reid
the
from
Kansas
the
City Chiefs.
Chiefs?
Yeah, so flipped it on its lid, but
Uh-huh.
that dude is a businessman. You look at
Okay.
what he reinvents over. I'm not talking about businesses.
The
I'm talking
offense.
about how he, nope, I'm talking about how he runs and builds an organization and how he touches. Like, he doesn't have to be the GM. He doesn't have to be the president. He doesn't
Yeah.
have to be the offensive or defensive coordinator. That dude, when he loses Tyreek Hill, he figures out how to run an offense.
Oh
That's
yeah.
that's a business leader, right? Like, it's application. It's
I
not
like
running a
that. That's a really
business.
great
It's
point.
application of running components for the greater good. Winning the Super Bowl in football is the greater good. That dude organizes and creates and iterates over and over and over again. So I think that would be the guy.
Man, that's awesome. Well, Joe, this has been awesome talking to you. I think, you have a lot of knowledge. I learned a lot, as well as, listeners of the show can, I guess, figure out in their own journeys, like how to combat whatever it is they want, and, apply some of the things that you've said. So really grateful for the conversation today. Thank you so much. And, looking forward to what else you guys create.
Fun hanging out with you, Dan. Thanks so much.